Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search specializes in helping small law firms in Texas hire lawyers and build great teams. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel here back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. Hope everyone had a great Easter weekend. Before we hop into this episode, a quick note that later this week we are dropping our next movie verdicts episode. Robert Callahan and I will do a deep dive into Liar, Liar. We all need to make some time to laugh during this period, and so talking about 1990s Jim Carrey is a good source for that. Okay, today's guest is Matt Pepping, a complex civil litigator with the San Antonio firm of Chasnoff Mungia. Matt began his career at a large law firm before leaving to form Chasnoff Mungia, and he is a Texas super lawyer rising star for 2018-2019. He is committed to pro bono work and community service, serves on a number of boards and committees, and we are excited to have him with us today. We did record this episode prior to the outbreak of COVID-19, but Matt was gracious enough to come back and record a few extra minutes with me just a few days ago to talk about the impact of the virus on their practice. And that segment will be at the end. And so I hope you'll stick around all the way through to catch those extra minutes of this episode. All right, with that, let's get to our conversation with San Antonio litigator Matt Pepping on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. All right, Matt Pepping joins us now. Matt, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, as we just talked before we hopped on here, I've introduced you a little bit to the audience, but would love to just hear from you to start off with a little bit about what your firm does and what your role is there, kind of what your practice looks like. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
Well, so as you know, and your viewers don't, but we're a pretty new firm. So we're coming up on our second anniversary.
Yeah.
My partners and I all came from big law, from various big law firms, and what we saw, we're in San Antonio, Texas. We saw an opportunity to continue to provide the same level of services, frankly, for our clients at a better rate.
Yeah.
Which are the sales pitch to our clients said, hey, we want to keep doing the same work, but we're just going to charge you less for it. And that, went over pretty well,
right.
As you can imagine. So we really just focus on two practice areas. One is commercial litigation.
Mm-hmm.
So, your breach of fiduciary duty, partnership disputes, fiduciary litigation, any of those business types of disputes. And then insurance coverage is really our other kind of main practice area. I'm fortunate to have extraordinary partners who are all really at the top of their field. So we haven't had a chance. We've stayed busy from day one.
Yeah.
We've grown from 4 to now we're at 11 attorneys.
Amazing.
And we're continuing to hire.
That's fantastic. And congratulations on the launch of the firm. And like you said, it's relatively new, and that early growth and success, that's really great stuff. And when we first got to know each other, I think you were about 6 months in. And it's great to see all that you've been able to do just in a short amount of time. Well, what are a couple of things that you're seeing just in the areas that you practice in that are kind of on the horizon, or things that you're keeping track of, maybe that are impacting your clients or impacting your practice? What are some kind of current event things that are coming along?
So, we've been excited. We try to walk hand in hand with our clients.
Right.
And we're fortunate to be kind of in a boutique position where we can really help clients from kind of we only do litigate. We're only a disputes firm.
Yeah.
But we help them out with their first dispute. And then, those get bigger. But we get to watch their growth. And that's always exciting for us to see.
Yeah.
the things that we're seeing that everyone's concerned about right now, frankly, is cyber risks.
Mm.
So, everybody has exposure with just the rapid, expansion of technology and all of our reliance on the internet and the cloud, and the exposure that creates for your clients and your information, no matter where you are or what you're doing.
Yeah.
I can give you, an example. My wife has a small business, small little cookie delivery business, and her computer, someone broke in, stole her computer, and it created a whole bunch of headaches just in terms of, there's employee information, there's client information, and you have an obligation to help protect that. So that's something we see a lot of clients being concerned about.
Right.
In terms of things that that we're excited about for the practice, it's also related to cyber, and that's just the technology growth.
Yeah.
The more every day, it seems like there are newer and better tools coming online for attorneys that in many ways make our lives much easier, and also allow a boutique to go up and litigate against the bigger firms. You don't need the manpower that used to be necessary. And so those are kind of, I think the technology is a blessing and a curse in so many aspects of our lives.
Yeah.
You got to take advantage of the blessings because you're definitely going to live with the curses.
For sure. Well, and that's interesting with the cyber, because that's something that, as I was transitioning out of career development at Baylor and starting to talk and counseling students there, but then also talking to young attorneys in this transition, of course, the cyber security and data breach practice area is one that gets asked about a lot, talked about a lot. I'm curious, since you're working with clients in a dispute and litigation standpoint, and you're seeing them concerned with that. What do you see as maybe the opportunity for young lawyers to get involved with, or kind of develop a niche practice around that cyber area or security area?
Oh, there's a lot, because it's new.
Yeah. And
frankly, there's a generational issue. So, new attorneys grew up with only knowing, iPads, internet, computer, high speed. There is an understanding level that's just innate for them that requires other attorneys a lot of work to catch up with.
Yeah.
So they're starting out from a great vantage point there.
Yeah.
And then it's just educating yourself. It really is a new and developing area. There's certification classes now you can take. There are, courses that will explain to you the different regulations, the different responses you can do. But it's really, there are a lot of opportunities there for young attorneys.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. Well, and one thing I also wanted to have you speak to today is just kind of the what's going on in San Antonio from a practice standpoint, and also just from a city standpoint, for those in the audience who may be in one of the other cities around the state and looking to make a move, or those just not familiar, because I'm a big fan of your city. And so I would love for you to have a platform to just talk about it a little bit.
I appreciate it. And I can sing San Antonio's praises for a while.
Yeah.
I first came to San Antonio in 2001. And 19 years later, it resembles very little the place that I came to.
Yeah.
The growth here is astounding, both economically and also for younger attorneys, for people who like to go out, the arts, the bars, the restaurants. It's really become a fantastic place to live, and a fantastic place to raise a family.
Yeah.
In terms of the practicing law here, we're fortunate. Our practice takes us all over the state. We're all over the state, and really, frankly, all over the country.
Yeah.
And so it gives you a healthy comparison model. And the San Antonio bar is one of the most collegial and friendly bars that I've ever encountered. Yeah. The attorneys are warm. They're welcoming. They are quick to extend you any professional courtesy that they can. And more often than not, you will find at the end of a lawsuit, opposing counsel will probably be your friend, and will start becoming a referral source. Yeah. So it's a really good local bar. It's relative to some of the other bigger major cities. The bar is pretty small, so you're much more likely to know most of the other attorneys. Right. So it makes it it's a good place to practice law.
Yeah, that's always been my understanding from everyone I've talked with there. And it kind of has a similar feel as I talk to the people that are in Fort Worth and Tarrant County, and just kind of that, you've got that, it's a really large city and the downtown's vibrant and lots of things going on. And yet the bar seems more of like a small town feel almost in the collegiality and all of that. And especially as you mentioned, and you've got this personal experience of having come from a large law firm and now opening your own firm, that San Antonio does have, a couple of our obviously large law firms headquartered there or with offices there, but really is more of a smaller firm environment across the board, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are a handful of large firms here, but we don't have the same roster that you're going to find in Houston or Dallas or New York or Chicago.
Yeah.
But that's not to say, I mean, the lawyers here are doing the same type of work,
right,
and competing with those guys every day. And it is a huge advantage when someone from out of state or out of the city comes and wants to litigate a case in Bexar County. You got a home field advantage.
Right. That's good. Well, something I was wanting to ask you about just prepping for this is, I noticed you're involved in or have been involved in a number of different organizations, both community and within the bar and practice as well. Talk just about why that's important to you and what your advice would be to young lawyers as to how to get involved and the importance of getting involved within their community, within their bar, all those types of things.
Yeah. First, I would say as a principle, it is imperative and a responsibility of every attorney to be involved in charitable and community organizations. There are plenty that need help, and as an attorney, you are uniquely positioned to help them out. It's not hard to get involved either. Really you just show up and tell them you want to. If it's a nonprofit, a community environment, they're going to let you in.
Yes, they will.
It's trying to find something that you care about. We've made a big push with our younger attorneys here to make sure everyone here is involved in different boards. You'll hear some people talk about it's important for business development, and that's true. Something could always come out of that. Every relationship is a potential, source of business.
Right.
But what's much more important is if you use your talents and your skills to serve the community you're in. I think that's an obligation we have as attorneys, and you'll find that they are some of the most rewarding opportunities you can get.
Yeah.
The same holds true for pro bono work. I think all attorneys need to be doing pro bono work. One of my best experiences was we litigated the same-sex marriage case in Texas, pro bono, and took that through. We were one of the first ones to file. Obviously, we weren't the ones that got up to the Supreme Court,
right?
But it was fascinating work. It was something that was not in really my practice area.
Yeah.
And you saw on a daily basis real results, and we didn't realize the impact of those results until we finally got a decision from the Supreme Court, then the Fifth Circuit for us, and the mandate came down. And you'd have people calling, and our phones were really ringing off the hook, asking, hey, my spouse is about to die, my husband's about to die, I need to be on this death certificate. Can you help me with that? And then you start to see the real impact it had.
Yep.
And so that's just, do pro bono work. It's and serve your community, and you'll never go wrong there.
Yeah, and I'm glad you set the perspective on that, which is it's the right thing to do. It's an obligation that you have after getting a license and becoming a lawyer, and then the business development piece is a benefit that might exist and is there, but it's a secondary.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've gotten any work from any of the community development things I've ever done. I won't stop doing them though.
Right, so, right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you about when you first started as a lawyer, those first 2, 3, 4 years in practice. What's something that you learned at that stage that has stayed with you throughout your career and is important to the way that you practice today?
Yeah. I think the most important thing you learn early on is attitude is everything. And that's, if you've made it to this stage, you've graduated from law school, you're practicing, you passed the bar, you're practicing law. you're a smart person, right?
Yeah.
Let's set table stakes. Everyone around there, everyone you're dealing with is a smart person.
Yeah.
Okay. What's going to separate you from anyone else is the willingness that you have to go the extra mile. Whether or not, are you bringing energy to the team? Are you sucking it out of it? You really, at that stage, when you're a new attorney, you don't know anything. You don't know what you're doing, and
Right.
you've got to give people a reason to want to keep working with you, so that you can learn how to do it, and then you can understand it, and then you need to, pass that wisdom on to the next person. But I think there are a number of characteristics that I think set apart great attorneys from just good ones. The best attorneys I know, contrary to public opinion, don't have big egos. They do have great attitudes. They're the first to give compliments to their opposing counsel, to their partners, to their clients. It's just, if you want to be successful, be a good person. Drop your ego, respect everybody, and also have some humility. I mean, one of the things that I struggled with early on was, what we do as lawyers is really not science, it's art. There's a lot of ways to get to the end result that the client needs.
Right.
And so recognizing that maybe the way I want to go is not the way the team's going to go, and still jumping on and doing that.
Yeah.
But overall, just be a good person.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. What's a common mistake? What do you see in young lawyers that they could either work on, or the mistakes that are common to make?
Yeah, I think the most common mistake is not feeling comfortable to speak up when you need help, and so allowing a problem to snowball, and kind of grow. The worst is when you think someone's been working on something for 2 or 3 weeks, and you go to get it, and it's 2 or 3 days before your deadline, and it's nowhere. And it's not because the person's not working. It's not because they're not trying. It's just that they were stuck.
Yeah.
That happens. That happens to everybody. Always at every stage of your career, that will continue to happen.
Right.
The difference that you got to make, and you got to make the transition, being willing to raise your hand and say, "Hey guys, I need some help. I'm stuck here." Yeah. And kind of correlated to that is also, I think the other thing is, when attorneys don't think that they have anything to offer, so they don't speak up, and they don't, you're in a team meeting and they don't offer their opinions.
Right.
You got it. You're there for your judgment. So let people hear it. The team won't always agree with it, but at least hear it. And if they're unwilling to hear it, if you're working with attorneys who aren't willing to hear your opinion and your thoughts on a case, go find other attorneys to work with.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to get a good result for your clients.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice. As you go through the process now of hiring lawyers, and you mentioned that you've expanded here just in the last year from 4 to, I think you said 11. As you've gone through that process, what do you look for, especially in starting off with within the resume, within the cover letter, or other documents that you see? What are some of the things you're looking for? What are the maybe pet peeves that you're hoping not to see, but that you have to consider? What are some of those things?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first thing I'm looking for, just there are table stakes. So we're going to want to see that that you went to good schools, and that you performed well.
Yeah.
But that's definitely not going to get you. That alone won't get you an offer. What I'm, this is specific to me and my partner.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll have different perspectives. Yeah. I want to see a history of someone who's worked hard, who has, who is not necessarily interested in, the extracurriculars from high school. Those drive me nuts. Even some extracurriculars, undergrad, some make sense, some don't. Right. But what I want to see is just that you have a history of being a hard worker, that you have team experience. That's the most important thing to me personally. Yeah. I like to run my cases with a team. Yep. So I need to know you can work in that environment. Yep. And then anything that's just going to show kind of a willingness to learn. And really, then the other big thing that I always care about, and this is more of it in the interview process, is, does this person have a good attitude? And can I see myself, are they going to be helpful or hurtful when we're in high stress situations? Right. Because that's normally where we find ourselves. Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do want to ask you a specific question about the interview process in just a second. The last thing I want to ask you about on documents is, are there things that you
are looking for, or that you, or that maybe are things that mistakes people make on cover letters specifically that you see?
Yeah.
What are some things?
Cover letters fall into two camps: the horribly generic,
Right.
or the ones that you really want to read and you pick up and you say, okay, this person, I almost don't care what's on the resume. I got to meet them.
Yeah.
That's normally, you want to be in the latter group. A lot of them, and it's hard. It really is hard to write cover letters because it's, you're trying, you don't know the person you're writing to, you don't know the audience necessarily. But anything you can do that just shows some sort of passion, that exhibits good writing. One of the, we made an offer to one person almost just based upon we were ready to offer after reading her cover letter because it was so well written. It was so good.
Wow.
And it really, that can set you apart.
Yeah.
Obviously the writing sample helps too. But the writing sample, we know that has gone through multiple iterations.
Right.
It's been looked at by a law professor. You're following however you were taught to write in law school.
Right.
So there's not as much opportunity to set yourself apart with a writing sample.
Yeah.
Cover letter, you can really can kind of stand out from the pack.
Yeah. Well, now I'm curious. So what's an example of something that she did in that cover letter to make you want to hire her on the spot?
Yeah. No, this person, she had worked in New York before she went to law school, and she had worked with victims of domestic violence.
Yep.
And her writing, it was the message of what she was saying. It was also the technical quality of writing, which was just, it was fantastic. It read, the letter itself read very well.
Yeah.
And so it was really, it still stands out to us.
No, clearly. Yeah, no, it came right to your mind when I asked you that. Well, that's cool. And you mentioned interviews. So how do you go about looking for, you want to see that positive attitude that they can be effective within a team environment. How do you go about doing that in an interview? How can a candidate demonstrate those qualities within the interview?
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard, and I think the most important part is to be genuine. So whoever you are, just be yourself,
right?
And a lot of the interview is always it's a forced process, right?
Yeah.
Typically, we're usually right now, we've hired a few. We've gone through one summer program. We've hired another for a summer program next year. That's generally, we came from, just backtrack a little bit. At our old firms, they pulled away from the summer programs. They saw them as very expensive and not necessarily productive. We actually have the inverse, the opposite perspective on that. We like a summer program because it gives us an opportunity to get to know the person.
Yep.
It's much more important to us in that environment. So in the interview, in a small place like us, you're going to go and you're going to get to meet with all the partners. You're going to meet with most of the attorneys who work here. And everyone just wants to, it's more of do we like this person? Can I work with them in a stressful situation?
Yeah.
What have they done in the past? Going back to kind of the team mentality. And you can really get a sense, it's hard to fake it for 4 hours interviews.
Right.
You can get a sense by the end of that. Is this person someone that I'm going to enjoy being around? And then, then we'll give them, if they fit the bill, then we've got the summer to make sure that we're right about it. And go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. And I imagine there might be some candidates thinking 4-hour interview. What is that?
Oh yeah. Well, so for us, you're going from, you're meeting with about basically 30-minute clips. So one person, 30 minutes, next person, 30 minutes. There's a lunch in there.
Yep.
We try not to make it too exhausting, and we'll ply you with plenty of coffee throughout.
Right. No, and that's really, I kid, because just recently I was talking to a candidate who basically had like a full day interview, and which is pretty intense, and but we kind of talked through it, but it was similar. Like the firm was of enough size, and everybody wanted to be part of the process, and so it does kind of become, in some ways for the candidate, it can be almost repetitive because they're kind of talking over the same things with just different people. It's not trying to come up with new things to say for an entire day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's more of an endurance test than it is a creativity test.
No, that's 100%. 100%.
We talked a little earlier about business development in the context of how it might come about from working within your community and organizations, things like that. But how do you advise your young lawyers, or how would you advise young lawyers to start going through the process of thinking about developing clients, developing their own business? Is that even something they should be considering in those first few years of practice, or should they just be kind of totally focused on, learning how to be a lawyer, or how do they balance that?
I think it depends on who you're working with and what type of firm you're in.
Yeah.
Here, we don't put any obligation on our young attorneys to develop business.
Right.
If we're doing our job well, and they're doing their job well, eventually they're going to transition to a position where, my clients aren't going to call me first. They're going to call my associate first, or one of my other colleagues first. And that's the best way. If you want to develop new business, the best way to do it is just be a really good attorney, and make sure you're working with people that give credit where credit's due. And by that I mean a partner who's not taking credit for all your work.
Right.
And so, and that I think is that's the best way. That's the way the vast majority of my work originated, because I was fortunate to work with a couple of really, really great attorneys who were always more than happy to say, hey, why don't you just talk to Matt?
Yeah.
And so you gotta kind of continue to pay that forward. Outside of that, business development is so hard. It really is. If you're trying to develop new attorneys, or if you're trying to develop new business, the best thing that I would recommend to people is become an expert in a subject area.
Yeah.
Be the guy that people know. He knows these things, or she knows this area, and then start developing and marketing yourself as an expert.
Yeah.
That's much more tangible to a client than I'm a really good attorney.
Yeah.
Or I'm an attorney at this firm and call me if you need help.
Yeah.
So those are the best advice I can give is just be a really good attorney, and then find a subject area you're interested in and explore it, and find some speaking opportunities and things like that to kind of market your expertise.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And we talked about it, I think it was a couple of weeks ago here, that being an expert or kind of positioning yourself as an authority within a particular practice or industry, especially the more specific, the better, also really makes it easier for your colleagues in the bar to refer cases to you in that area, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly right. When you become known as the go-to person on something, when your colleagues know, I don't know how to do this, but I know, I know this person who does.
Yeah.
That's when you're going to start you'll really start seeing results. Now that takes, just so everyone understands, that takes years.
Yes.
That doesn't develop overnight.
Right.
It is a long haul.
Right. Absolutely. It's a commitment and a long-term plan.
Yeah.
Well, we talked earlier a little bit about technology and how that's both a blessing and a curse within the practice. As we start to look at some of the just big picture trends in technology and the law on the horizon, whether it is artificial intelligence or other tools that are out there, some of which are sort of being marketed and built as a little bit of a replacement for lawyers or the lawyer hour and things like that. How do you see that with regards to young lawyers coming up right now and just being mindful about how to stay relevant and competitive and valuable over the course of their career as this technology comes into play?
I think that the key thing you said there is stay relevant, which to me means you got to stay on top of the developments.
Right.
And you have to recognize, as a lawyer, your clients are implementing and trying out and working with new technologies every day, and they expect the same of you, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Technology has made it so much easier for us. You can do a document review much more rapidly than you used to. You're not flipping through papers. You're not just doing a keyword search. You can have technology assisted review, all sorts of different things. On the transactional side, artificial intelligence is definitely making a step in that direction. Mm-hmm. To be able to do some of the more mundane contracts, and eventually it's going to be doing. It will be doing more of what a lawyer does on a day-to-day basis. That's just kind of inevitable,
right?
In my view. So figuring out a way to work with that and being, being a leader in that area is much better than being a follower.
Yeah.
So you want to just stay on top of it. I think for especially younger attorneys, they're so used to technology,
Right.
that they will thrive in this world.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hope so. And I think so as well. The last thing I want to ask you about before we start to wind down here is just about how young lawyers that are practicing right now, should approach the idea of the work-life balance issue with their firms. I know it's one that comes up quite a bit and can be controversial at times. And so, what are you doing in your firm with your lawyers, and how are you kind of approaching that?
Yeah, so I always joke that for as smart as lawyers are, we have the worst business model, and that's where we sell our time. And then you get to the end and realize the only thing more valuable than money is time, and so it's a terrible. We're not good at it.
Right.
It's work-life balance is a constant struggle.
Yeah.
I went through a period where I was completely burned out. I've seen other attorneys get burned out. You've got to find a way to keep your sanity.
Yeah.
I think that newer attorneys are demanding that firms across the board pay more attention to work-life balance. It's something that, I think I just read it yesterday. An article came out saying that new lawyers, the most important thing to them, more than money, more than practice area, more than where they're living, is work-life balance. So law firms have to respond to that because that's the talent pool. I think that we are. I know at our firm we are regularly monitoring our people's hours, make sure that no one's just completely underwater. There always will be times as a lawyer where you're going to put in the 100-hour week.
Right.
You might put in a 300-hour month sometimes. I mean, it's going to happen. But then there needs to be a time where you can wind down after that.
Yeah.
As the firm's putting so much money into training you and into developing you, the last thing they want for you to do is burn out and leave.
Right.
We want our attorneys to stay here, be successful, and succeed and have great careers. And if they don't stay here, we want them to leave and have great things to say about being here. You know?
Right.
We don't want them to walk away and say it's a sweatshop.
Right.
It killed me. So so that's something that's always at top of mind for us. But it's making a move. It's the hardest thing right now is we all have our phones. We wake up in the middle of the night and you can look at them. Yeah. You got to do the little things. Don't put your phone by your bed. Decide you're going to go to bed at a certain time and go to bed.
Yeah.
It's those things.
Yeah. No, that's a very practical but very good one that I think a lot of us could take to heart.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, me too. I'm talking to myself as well. Well, we've got a few rapid fire questions here to wrap up. Before we do that, is there anything else that we haven't touched on yet that you might like to share with our audience?
Yeah. So I've started, going back to one of my jobs here is really in our firm to make sure that we're taking care of our people. And I'm always reading on, what can we do to help manage a team, to be a better leader, that sort of thing. Yeah. And I came across a great article yesterday. And for your younger attorneys, for anyone in law school still, I think this is really relevant. It's an older article. It's in the Harvard Business Review by Clayton Christensen. And he said, you got to decide 3 questions before you start any profession, and one is, how can I ensure that I'm going to be happy in my career? The second is, how will I ensure that my family and friends will be an enduring source of joy? And the third, he calls it, how will I stay out of jail? I think it's better to say, how am I going to maintain my integrity? And that's different for everybody. And you got to think about what it is that you really want, because different firms will offer different things. There will be firms, and you'll have the opportunity to go work somewhere where you'll make a ton of money, but you'll do nothing but work.
Yep.
You'll have opportunities to go work other places where you won't make much money and you'll do a lot of work, but you'll love the work.
Yeah.
You'll have places to go and have more of a balance in your life. And so it's different for every person and finding what that person wants. But I think it's important especially as people are setting out, to think about those questions and to really spend the time analyzing them and come to some conclusions on them.
Yeah. I think that's wise. I mean, it's taking that really in-depth look kind of inside and trying to match it with your career ambitions and objectives and family and everything else that you want to have in front of you and just being intentional about that and not just kind of taking the first thing that comes along or the first whatever that comes along, just really fitting it into your plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then once you decide that, and if you can get to a spot where you feel good with your solutions to that, or your answers to those questions, it makes it easier not to worry about the comparison. How
Yeah.
am I doing compared to this person who's next door to me or that person down the hall from me?
Right.
You got your standard and live to your standard.
Right. Right. No, that's good. Well, are you ready for a few rapid fire questions to end our time?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Let's have it.
Let's do it. Name the one trait or characteristic you most want to see in an associate.
A good attitude.
What habit has been key to your success?
Discipline.
Favorite app or productivity tool?
Definitely my iPad.
Any particular app on there?
I go through a litany of them. Right now, so I'm using it for note taking. I'm using it for document review. I'm using it for PDFs. I use it for trials. And I'm always kind of cycling through new apps because they develop new ones every day.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned that. What's the latest new one that you're excited about?
So, right now, so we use in our office, we have a doc review program called NextPoint, which we can use for trials. We can use for depot prep, for transcript reviews, and it's all cloud-based, so I can access on my iPad anywhere.
Cool.
Which is great because when I used to carry, those 5-inch binders with exhibits and deposition transcripts, it's all on an iPad now.
That's awesome.
So
yeah,
it makes travel a lot easier.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right. Well, sorry, audience. I violated my own rules on the rapid fire, but I was just really curious. Favorite legal movie?
A Few Good Men.
Nice.
Just because I think it was the first rated R movie I saw. So.
I'm glad you said. I got to think about that. We are recording tonight. It'll be in the feed for people once they listen to this episode. But we're recording tonight our deep dive into A Few Good Men. So yeah.
Oh, that's so that is in law school. My two of my best friends and I would watch it all the time. And it was much more interesting than studying whatever we're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. Do you have do I presume the final courtroom scene is your favorite scene, or is it a sneaky another one that you like the best?
I think it's when Hendricks is on the stand.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better than that. So,
right.
Talk about a difficult witness.
Well, I was going back and I watched it a couple times back and took notes and stuff for this episode. And the part I was really enjoying was when Ross is walking Downey through his timing on the day that he wasn't in his room, and and where Tom Cruise and them are writing question marks on the notepad. They know they're in trouble. Something's about to come here.
It's not going to be good.
Well, if you weren't in your room at this, how could if you weren't all that? Yep. That was really that stuck out to me this time as a really neat, just watching the lawyer work and be creative and
absolutely.
So it was fun to go back and watch it again. And
I believe it. It drives my wife crazy. Anytime it's on, I watch it.
Oh man,
so it's.
Well, it was. I mean, back when in the late '90s, it was. I felt like it was on cable like every 2 hours on TNT or TBS or something for 3 years straight.
Yeah, and it'll go back. It'll keep going through little fits like that where it's on all the time, and it's just. So like, didn't you watch that yesterday? Yeah. So.
I feel like that kind of kicked off the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon thing because you could almost circulate everything back to him in that movie. And connecting all these actors back. So it's been fun. But anyway, so people listening right now, it's in your feed. You can go back and find it. But we are recording it tonight. So
that's great. That'll be fun.
Well, Matt, thanks you again so much for taking the time to be with us today. It was fun to catch up, and congrats on all your success.
Thanks for having me, and good luck on your new venture.
I appreciate it.
Excited to see what comes of it.
Thanks. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Matt Pepping. As I mentioned in the intro, Matt came back and talked to us just a couple of days ago about how COVID-19 has impacted their firm, their staff, their clients since that original interview took place prior to the outbreak. And we didn't get to ask him about that then. So he came back to record those extra minutes, and we are going to play those for you now. It's about 10 extra minutes, and I hope you'll stick around for it. Let's get right to that conversation. Here we go. All right, well, as we mentioned before, our interview with Matt was before COVID-19 really came onto the scene, and so we thought it was appropriate to go back and get a few minutes with him to learn more about what was happening at their firm. So appreciate him taking the time to do that. Matt, how are things with you all? How are you doing? How's the firm, clients, all of that? What are kind of the state of things with you all?
Yeah. Well, like most, we are for the most part working remotely. We're fortunate early on when we were starting our firm. I think I mentioned in the first segment that we're about 2 years old now. We invested really heavily in technology and cloud computing and making sure people could work wherever they needed to. So we haven't missed a beat in terms of client services. And I think we've probably had people working remotely for 2 or 3 weeks now. Um, Challenge is not in maintaining the service to the client. The challenge is kind of in your loss of your interaction time with your team, and not being able to see them and interact with them on kind of like a free flowing basis like we normally do around here. We've tried different ways to get around that. We've done, we have uh, the Zoom happy hour. We start Zoom coffee breaks in the morning. Anyone can jump on and say hello, which is important, to kind of maintain the atmosphere and the kind of sense of team that we want to have here. Um, but it's still it's hard. It's definitely hard.
Well, great. Well, and how have your clients been impacted? Have you seen a shift in what their needs are? What's going on with them right now?
They're busier. A lot of our a good portion of our firm's client base is in Lloyd's of London insurers and domestic insurers, and so they are picking up claims, and we expect that to continue. And at the same time, the hardest part is everybody is living under this cloud of uncertainty, and so there's increased angst in everyone. And so just trying to make sure that we can be there for the clients, and be a source of calm for them in kind of these times. But for the most part, all of our clients are in the same boat as we are. There are some that are essential services, so they're still working, but most part, everybody's working from home. Phone calls are interrupted with children and dogs and deliveries and all those sorts of things, and everyone's fine with it.
Yeah, a lot of grace to go around right now is sort of the key, it seems
That's
like.
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
what about the legal community there in San Antonio and Bexar County, the local bar, the courts? What's been going on in those circles?
Yeah, so it's kind of I'd say it's inspiring for the most part. The I've never seen people who are working in harder circumstances have a better appreciation for their adversary. Like you just mentioned the word extending grace all around. I was supposed to be taking a deposition today. Opposing counsel lost a family member to coronavirus, and so it's yeah, you get a new sense of okay, um, we can all be a little more collegial. Our here is already very collegial, but we can do it a little better. Bexar County District Court, they're moving to Zoom hearings. So it's a different beast. I think we're going to try to do trials virtually. We'll see how that goes, and that just opens up a host of issues you would never even imagine. So it's kind of the brave new world, and everyone's figuring it out together. The Bexar County, the district judges here, had a CLE on Friday where they were going to talk through the new procedures. We're a presiding court down here. You can't do that anymore. You can't go down to presiding. So how does that work? And when you have an emergency hearing, um, if it's a family matter or something like that, what are they doing around that? And at that, they had that CLE on Zoom. It had about 400 people participating, and so it's an interesting time. But for the most part, I'm more inspired by my colleagues, my coworkers, and my adversaries, because everyone I think is handling this really well.
Yeah, and any advice to lawyers who maybe haven't done remote or video, whether it's depositions or hearings, anything that you've learned, especially in the last couple of weeks, maybe that you could pass along as that maybe becomes more of the
Yeah.
norm in how we conduct some of these things?
It's unique, and I think for the most part, most litigators will tell you they don't like it if you're taking a deposition because you're not in the room with the person. You do lose a little bit of that interaction in the sense of is this person, how much do they really believe what they just said? How much do they really know about this issue? So you're losing some of that, but overall. given the circumstances, I think that the technology is pretty good. It's easy to show exhibits. It's easy to kind of to take the deposition itself. It is this type of interaction. And so it's something we're all growing a little more accustomed to and a little more familiar with. It's not my preferred method, but it'll work. That's for sure. I would say, in terms of tips, just practice beforehand. You need to be familiar with the technology. You don't want to stumble over it, and that way you can really use it. And there are risks as well when you're defending it. You want to make sure that your client's not going to have an exhibit in front of them. And you're not sitting next to them. So it's there are things that you got to consider and get in front of and figure out ways to handle those challenges.
All right. Well, and any other thoughts that you have just looking forward in terms of what you're concerned about or keeping your eye on? Anything that is just top of mind for you right now as we continue to try to move through this?
I think overall, the uncertainty that hangs over everyone's head is in one of the rare instances ever. That uncertainty is over everybody's head, and everyone's dealing with it. Everyone's dealing with unique challenges. We've got financial insecurities. You've got firms who are worrying about, are they going to make payroll? What's going to happen with their client base? So there's a lot going on right now, and a lot of, I think, anxiety. For the most part, I think though that you're still seeing the better aspects of humans here, particularly lawyers in the bar, who are for the most part acting really well, and continuing to represent their clients well, continuing to get things done, and working through very challenging circumstances. So more than anything, I go through these dips where you get nervous, and it's normal. And you're crazy if you're not, right? But overall, you got to kind of find those moments and buck up and have a little optimism when you see, all right, you know what, like it's going to be okay. And for the first time in my life that I remember, we are literally all in this together. So there's no one who's excused from this. So everyone's dealing with it, and I think we will get through it.
Well, and do want to try to end on a more happy and optimistic note. So what's been your favorite social distancing activity that you've either discovered or rediscovered?
Yeah. So fortunately, my wife got me a rowing machine for Christmas, and I've been putting in a whole lot of meters on that thing. So I'm a big fan of that. But really, I have enjoyed getting to spend a lot more time with the kids than I used to. So they may not. I think I might be annoying them more than the other way around. But we're having fun going on bike rides and walking the dogs and doing those little things that you can't do now because there's so much you can't do. So that's my favorite. And Zoom happy hours are good. I highly recommend that for everybody. Get a Zoom happy hour schedule. They go over much better than you'd expect.
All right. Well, listen, Matt, thank you again so much for taking the time, both initially and then now most recently, to spend time with our audience, with us. We really appreciate you doing that and wish you all the best.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and happy to come back anytime.
All right. My thanks again to Matt Pepping for joining us on the show twice. Well, twice for me, once for you, but and twice for Matt. So appreciate his willingness to do that. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider doing two things? One, would you subscribe to this show in whatever podcast app or player that you use so that you don't miss an episode? And will you also share this episode or tell your friends or colleagues in the Texas legal community about the show so we can serve as many of you as possible? If you have any suggestions or thoughts about the show, or if I could help you in any way, please feel free, and I encourage you to email me directly, daniel@varsitysearch.com. All right, quick reminder, later this week, be looking out in your feed for our next Movie Verdicts podcast, Liar, Liar. It'll be a good time, and we'll have some fun with that. Okay, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel here with Varsity Search, and we'll talk to you next time.